Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch, myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry we're in of writing and publishing. And today we are delighted to welcome all the way from Wyoming, which is one of my personal favorite states. I absolutely love that place. Rick Partlow, who's a million-copy best-selling author of science fiction. We are delighted to have you, Rick. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
We are delighted to have you. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing great. Thanks, Roland. Thanks, Rick, for joining us. Yeah, like you've written a lot of books, Rick. So we want to sort of touch on that because the idea of being so prolific and so efficient in your writing is something that a lot of authors can learn from. I mean, not everyone's going to be able to, I think, keep up the pace that you have. I think you've got your work. You said you were working on your 89th novel since 2011. So in 15 years, I can't even do the math on that. It's,
well, technically the first two I actually had done for years.
Okay.
It's
so
the other
86.
Yeah.
So, what is that, like 5 per year or something like that? And these aren't short novels either, right? There's 80 to 100,000.
Yeah. They probably all average out to about around 90,000 words. Some of them are really long, like 180,000, and some are around 65 or 70. But
yeah, it's amazing because, I'm as a romance writer myself, I will say this at the risk of upsetting some people, but let me say that in my mind, it's a lot easier to write 80 to 100,000 word romance novel than it would be to write an $80 to $100,000 sci-fi military space opera, right? To me, it's not like, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but there's a lot more research, a lot more technical stuff, that a lot more parts, sciencey parts that you have to get right in a sci-fi thing that would cause it usually to take longer to write than to be writing a romance where, often you're writing just about a relationship between people and stuff happens, but a lot of times you're just, those are just things that the plot points. It's not as much of the research part. So what impresses me about, obviously the sheer number is impressive, but the fact that you're writing in that kind of a genre too, and being that prolific, I don't know how you can even do that. Do you have a science background?
I have some advantages over somebody who writes stuff that takes place on Earth, in that I usually just get to make up all the places, names, everything.
Right.
I don't look them up.
That part. Yeah. But the sciencey part, like if you're talking about warp drive.
I am not a hard science fiction writer. I mean,
okay.
I know some of the science. I've studied some of the science to write hard science fiction, but what has always made me, what I always have more fun with was kind of space opera style stories where the characters are more important than the technical details.
Okay, well then that's good. Then it's more understandable than if you're writing like books like Mars.
I'm not David Brin or Greg Bear.
You're not writing Dune.
Well, Dune is not a hard science fiction novel.
Well, it's not, but the focus of it, so many characters. Like you think of like Game of Thrones, where he's making it all up. It's all fantasy, right? But keeping track of the sheer number of people and the different government and the different religions, like those kind of things, I think would slow you down, as opposed to if you're sort of just writing a story that's more like
it can. I have a universe that I created way back. I started creating it way back in like 1985 when I was a teenager. And I have written somewhere around 45 books in that universe in different series. So you start with a universe that's been around for, 30 years in your head. And you've got all these books written in it. Yeah, keeping track of all the names of places. And I didn't have a world Bible. I didn't have time to write one, or anybody else to write one for me, or the money to get anybody to write one for me at the time. nowadays there's things like NotebookLM, which I don't know if you've heard of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you feed your documents into it, and then you can ask questions about the document, like where did this guy meet this girl, and it'll tell you. Which that is invaluable. It is, because I used to make mistakes. It was all in my head, so I used to have continuity errors, not in one book, but like from one series to the other. Like I'll say that this happened at this place back in their history, when in another book 10 years ago I said it happened somewhere else.
Yeah. Roland has talked on numerous occasions about his one of his mistakes around that area too. So I understand completely that, and I've talked in, I believe, I think it was either my blog or newsletters about NotebookLM and using that to create a world Bible. Even right, it has limitations. If you have that many books, I don't even think you can add that many books into it. Right, so you kind of want to build a world Bible so that you can use that.
I mean, usually I can only do one series at a time,
right,
in NotebookLM, but it is handy. It's probably the handiest writing aid that I've ever come across, honestly.
Absolutely, yeah.
I used to have, like, if I was writing in a universe and I needed to know the name of a ship or a planet, I'd have to go back and skim through the other books in the series to try to remember it, or do a search in Word for certain words, and it would take forever. It would take me like an hour to research something that's only going to be a paragraph in the book. So NotebookLM just saves so much time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With a series of that scope, I think you have to have something like that, and otherwise it's going to slow you down. So I guess that's one of the things you use to keep yourself efficient. How many words a day are you writing?
My general rule is to try to write 3,000 words a day. There are times when I do more. Like last couple, I started writing a new book, and usually when I start writing a book right at the beginning, I can write more words because it's like the idea gushing out of you. But as you go along, you'll slow back down. The only time I don't write 3,000 words a day is when I am traveling, like when I like driving all day or something like that, and I just don't have the mental energy to write that much. So I'll go down to like 2,000 or 1,000. I've been driving all day, but I don't usually let myself get away with not writing other than that.
Right. And I mean, okay, so 3,000 words a day, and you're talking like every day of the week?
Yes, every day.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't stop until I'm forced to.
I mean, if you keep that pace up, 3,000 words a day, I think is very manageable for most people, although most people probably don't write every day. Well, for most authors, like they do typically have goals, word count goals, and we often talk about 3,000, 5,000, 2,000. And even though when you think of a 100,000 word book, you're like, wow, 2,000 is not very much. But when you span it over every single day, right, you're writing over a million words. You're writing over a million words a year, right? So
I've written over a million words in, I think, something like 4 of the last 6 years.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, if you're writing every 3,000 words a day for 365 days, that's 1.1 million words.
Days, because like I said.
Well, yeah. So you right, like I just said, there's some days that you're not going to, right? But that's that. So that to me that makes sense, because when you're talking about only 3,000, I was like, whoa, how are you getting that many words? But did a quick math over here. I can see how quickly it adds up. So when you write a book, are you pre-planning it? Are you writing, spending time building sort of like a framework for it? Are you planning?
I'm a big time outliner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to not be. The first 6 books that I wrote were all pants. Seat of the pants, writing out of the dark, whatever you want to call it. It's what's the other term that people use for that?
Discovery writers, the new
discovery
term.
Writing. Yes, I did that, and it was more. Honestly, if I'm being perfectly brutally honest, it was more fun because I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of the book. And I know some people, even who discovery writers, think they do, but I never knew what was going to happen at the end of the book. And it was like a movie unfold or reading a book as I wrote it. And I loved that. The only problem was it took a year to write a book.
Yeah.
Which
Well, because you
spent a lot of time going down blind alleys.
Right, exactly. You paint yourself into a corner, right?
Well, painting myself into a corner was something I would do on purpose just to spur my creativity.
Okay.
And when I did that, I would sit down and I would write bullet points of how can I get myself out of this without rewriting the first part of the book or changing anything. That was a challenge to it because I wasn't doing it for a living at the time. It was a side thing. Well, at first it was just, a hobby. Then it became like a side hustle before it became a living. But I would just write out bullet points of all the ways I could get out of it. And honestly, I think that that's if it's not best to other people, it's some of my favorite stuff because I just had to just pull it out of my guts, and come up with a way out of it. But, if you want to write a book a year, you can do it that way. But if you want to make a living at it, you can't do it that way.
So when you say 3,000 words a day, does that include when you're plotting out a book?
Yeah. Well, when I'm plotting out, for instance, like the third or fourth book in a series, I can outline it very quickly because the world's created, the characters are established. Usually the bad guys are established, maybe introduce new ones or whatever. But it's not that difficult to come up with a plot for a book 4 or a book 5. If you're starting a new world, if it's a new series and especially a new universe you're building, then it can take a while. I can come up with an outline for book 4 in a series in less than a week, maybe 4 or 5 days. If I'm writing a book 1 in a new series and a new universe, it can take 2 weeks. And unlike when I do 3,000 words a day when I'm writing the book, it's just however many words come to me. Because that's the real creative part of the journey is outlining it. So I will sit there and, just gush whatever ideas come out of my head onto the paper or the page, the pixels, and then I'll have to sort through them and organize them. And it could take a good 2 weeks to create a new universe and a plot for a book 1. But I mean, sometimes I'll get 10,000 words in a day doing that. And sometimes I'll get 500. It just depends on where I'm at in creating the universe.
So on a typical day when you're writing the book and you're writing, 3,000 words, how long does that generally take you?
If I sat down and did nothing else and focused just on writing straight through, I could probably get it done in maybe 3 or 4 hours. But I don't do that because it's not fun. and I know I can get it done anyway. So I pretty much just write in fits and spurts throughout the day. And most of it gets done at night after dinner when I'm settled down. Because during the day, I'll wake up, I have to get my crap together, run errands, play with the dog, which you might have heard barking. Just before lunch, it's hard for me to do any work at all.
Right.
After lunch, I'll write probably 1,000 words. Then I'll go to the gym, come home, eat dinner, and then I'll get the other 2,000 words in. Just, settle in and focus. During the day, it's hard for me to sit there and ignore the great outdoors here.
Well, listen, that's part of why people like writing, the writing lifestyle, is that you have that flexibility in your schedule to do things, other things during the day and write when you fit it in. As long as you're disciplined, that's one of the issues with that. It's a pro and a con depending on the kind of person it is, right? Some people find that liberating and they're able to do all these things and still get the writing done, and other people have the opposite, where they do all these things and it's the writing that they have trouble fitting in. They ended up, not.
I think it's discipline. Some people think it's more BDSM. because I kind of really am hard on myself when it comes to getting the words, and I'll stay up as long as I have to. I mean, usually I can get it done by like 11, go to bed, but sometimes I stay up to 2:30 in the morning finishing those words if it's not coming easy. And people say, you can't, I mean, that's crazy. Well, it's the job.
Absolutely. So what do you do with, beside from, the errands and stuff, are you spending time every day marketing the books, doing all the other things
No.
that you need to do? No,
I don't do that. I used to do that. Now all of my books except one are in the hands of publishers. So they handle the marketing for me. And I did this, I made a conscious choice to start doing this back in 2019 because I suck really bad at marketing. And it takes a long time for me to do the marketing that I wind up sucking at. So I'm like, this is not a productive use of my time, because I watched YouTube videos, I listened to podcasts, I would read articles, I would try what they did, and I would still fail at marketing. I'm like, so I need somebody who's a professional.
It's an entirely different skill set from being a writer. It's like you have to learn an entire industry to be able to do it yourself.
I tell people, if you want to be an indie writer, you're not being an indie writer. You're taking 2 full-time jobs at the same time, indie writer and indie marketer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're your own publisher. You have to do everything, right?
Yeah.
So you're not self-published then? You put everything
I was for a long time. In 2019, I encountered Steve Bowyer and Brett Bruno, who run Athon Books. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. They publish science fiction and lit RPG. And they started out as a small, I guess you would call it a hybrid publisher, where your books were still Amazon exclusive, Kindle Unlimited, but they covered all the costs of marketing, cover, editing, everything. And you got paid. Well, they pay various rates now, depending on what your experience is. But at the time, they paid me 50% of the gross royalties, which was very fair since they were handling all the expenses out of their end. This is back 6 or 7 years ago. So I don't know what their contracts are like now for people. It's probably, I think some of them more like 35% for people, just starting out or don't bring their own audience in.
That's still so much more than a traditional publishing contract.
It is. It's incredibly more, and that's why they publish like 250 books a year now. And unlike a traditional publisher, not only do you get the money within a few months, as opposed to like 2 years with a traditional publisher, but you usually make more money, even if your book's not that successful. Like people who get traditionally published and it's not that successful a book, they may get a few $100s, a couple $1,000. But you get that with Rhett and Steve, even on a book that's not really that successful, you get a few $1,000s and you get it quicker. So
yeah.
I published a series with them in 2019, a military science fiction series that was kind of an homage to BattleTech. It's called Wholesale Slaughter. And I love that series, by the way. And it did okay, did pretty good. And they got me a contract with Audible to produce the audiobooks for it, and a nice advance. Back when Audible used to give nice advances. And they said, write us another series, another military science fiction series. And that's how I got Drop Trooper, Contact Front and the Drop Trooper series, which is the one that really kind of made my career take off. It's in right. Now they're being stocked at Barnes and Noble.
And that's amazing. Doesn't that make you feel great? I don't know how many Barnes and Nobles you have in northwestern Wyoming, but
we don't have any in northwestern Wyoming, but just 87 miles away in Billings, Montana, there is one.
Just 87 miles.
This is the Rocky Mountain West. 87 miles is not that far.
So that makes more sense as well. A lot of authors when I'm trying to break down the ability to write, to be that prolific, right? A lot of self-publishers are bogged down with all that other stuff, with getting a book edited and cover design and marketing and advertising and, all that stuff. So if you have the ability to give that to a publisher and have, so you finish it, send it off to them, and then they take it from there, that's a big boon as well. So they're handling the editing.
I started out near the beginning of self-publishing. Right. In 2011 is when I self-published my first 2 books. I had written 2 books in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I had an agent, literary agent, trying to sell them, did not get them sold, and I kind of lost heart and didn't really finish anything for a while until a friend of mine told me about KDP. I said, hey, there's some people making big money on KDP. Why don't you put your books on there? So in 2011, I published the 2 books, not knowing what I was doing, having no concept of marketing, didn't know how to make a cover, didn't know how to format, priced them both at 99 cents a piece, and figured at least somebody would read them. I sold like 30,000 copies in the first 3 months. And so I should write more books. That's what I thought. And that's when I started writing. But at the time, in 2011, I don't know if you were publishing yourself back then, it was the Wild West in self-publishing. Yep. And you could get away with a bad cover in a amateur.
I did. That's me. That's me.
Me too. I mean, 2013 is around when I started, and it was still the same sort of thing. I was doing all my own covers, not recommended. I mean, when I first started making enough money to do this for a living was in late 2016, and how the book and series that took off hit it, no idea. I marketed, but I did it badly. Just some sort of quirk of fate made this one series take off, and I made more money that year than I ever had before in a year. And I said, well, this is it. I've made it. Now I just need to learn how to do marketing. And I started trying to do marketing and wrote more books. And then in the next year, I made about half that much money. And I'm like, I got to do marketing even harder. And I made about a third of that much money. And I'm like, I'm going to stop writing. And that is when things changed and got harder for everybody, for sure.
And then Athon Books came along and rescued my career from ignominy. And I published with them. I published with a publisher called Permantha Press, a guy named Scott Bartlett, who's also out of Canada. And then I published with Variant, J.N. Chaney, Variant Publishing. I've done like 3 series with him, but most of my stuff is with Athon. So, I found it very much to my advantage, since I am not a marketer, to have other people do that stuff. In my experience back in the old days, if you were back in the 20 books to 50K days, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who hit it big in self-publishing, I mean, the really big ones, they either had marketing backgrounds themselves, or were married to, or had a brother or sister with a marketing background who could help them. And unfortunately, none of that applied to me.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't to most authors. But so did you find that you were able to write more books then once you switched to having someone take over all that stuff?
About the same amount. They sold more. I didn't make my writing suffer in order to do the marketing. I just worked twice as hard and got a lot less
more hours. Yeah.
That's why I was about to quit when I
yeah, no, I understand. I mean, that's around the same time when I started Hidden Gems, because I was seeing the same sort of thing where the highs of the previous years of selling books started to decline. More people were advertising. That's where Mark Dawson's course came out. My Facebook ad spend went from a few $100s a month to thousands a month, and I was getting far less eyeballs on it, and I was not a great marketer. So And you know, I started Hidden Gems as sort of a hedge on that, and then it became took all my time. So you know, I just didn't have the time for writing then. Anyways, I mean, if I hadn't started it, I probably would have kept at it at least for a while and either failed or figured it out. But you know, this has allowed me to, you know, talk to people like yourself and figure out, you know, all the different things that people do, and there's a lot of different paths to success. And you know, definitely hiring somebody else that knows what they're doing, and that's something that we talk about all the time. Is you have to understand your strengths and you hire out, like whether it's, you know, have somebody doing your cover, your blurb, always you should have somebody editing, you know. But the marketing and the promotion, that part's one of the hardest parts. So it's great that you were able to get somebody that understands that space, and that sounds like they specialize in your type of book. Like that science fiction sort of thing.
Yeah.
And somebody you can trust as well, because unfortunately there are an awful lot of snake oil salesmen, particularly in sales and marketing. And
also, I mean, I know there have been a lot of snake oil salesmen, but beyond those people, which usually you can find out who those people are, there's also a lot of publishers who mean well and are honest, but they're just not very good at it. They don't know marketing much better than you do.
That's very true.
And you'll publish with them. They'll make up covers that probably they use AI nowadays, or before that they use stock art images and a little Photoshop, and they'll get somebody they know who's like an English teacher to edit your book, and they'll publish it, and you won't make any money. You know?
Right.
And
yeah, there's absolutely a lot of shady publishers, a lot of publishers, like you said, that mean well, but don't do as well for the authors. Yeah, that's something we've covered as well. Is that we've had some authors on here telling us some fairly bad horror stories of experiences that they've had, and you know, it's one of those things that you have to be really, really careful about. Usually, you know, you want talk to people and get some recommendations when you're going to go.
I mean, if you are, I like to tell people, if you are doing this just out of the love of writing, you just want to see your book out there with a cover on Amazon and, you know, get a few people reading it. Yeah, sure. Go with one of those publishers that's, they'll just publish anybody and they'll just do it for, you know, for fun. It's the part-time thing they do. That's fine. But if you want to make money at it, then you try to get in with somebody like Athon. I mean, there's very few people like Athon. There's Athon, there's a Variant, there's is it Mountaindale? I think it's Mountaindale. It's the fantasy and lit RPG publisher. But there's very few. There's just a handful that really know what they're doing. And they're getting more selective as things go on, because like I said, Athon's publishing 250 books a year. They have some huge names writing for them. They don't have to take anything that you send them. So you try to get on with someone like them. It's like a midway point between trying to go trad published, like with one of the big publishers, and doing it yourself. You know, it's not there. It's not like an open door. I mean, there's still there is a gatekeeper there. But for instance, if you send a manuscript to Bain Books, who's another science fiction publisher, nobody may ever read that thing. And if they do read it, it may be, you know, 2 years before you hear back from them. You send a manuscript to Athon, you'll hear back within a few months, and they'll tell you either we like it or no.
That's so true. You know, I was just talking about Jack Carr the other day, and Jack Carr, his first book, Terminal List, is a phenomenal book. But the only reason he got it published is he lives in Utah. He lives in the same town as Brad Thor, who's a very famous thriller author. Brad Thor introduced him to somebody who works at Simon & Schuster, and that's the only reason she read his manuscript. And she read it and she was like, this is amazing, we've got to publish it. But if he'd just gone the traditional route of sending it in or trying to get an agent, he might never have been discovered. And now who is he? He's the leading thriller author in America.
Yeah, even when I was trying to get started back in the late 90s, I understood at that point that it was too late for somebody like me to break into trad publishing after I had some experience with my agent, because the way things had gone was the family-owned publishing houses kind of got bought out by, you know, big corporations that are there to make money. And they basically said, we want as many books as we can get from this few people who we know actually sell them. And the opportunities for new writers to break into that got very, very narrow. I think at the time, this probably changed since then, but at the time, one of the only ways that a new writer could break in, other than just knowing somebody, is writing for like a franchise, maybe BattleTech, Star Trek, something like that.
Right.
It's funny now that even the big publishers, they will chase authors who are independently successful. Like Andy Weir started off as a self-published author, and then he got, I like that. I like the little caveat there.
It depends. Andy Weir is like a unicorn. You know, people like Andy Weir, like who did 50 Shades of Grey? What was her name?
E.E.
James.
James. Yeah. People like that they are not something you can hope to reproduce.
Right.
I mean, Andy Weir had lots of advantages and went viral, just like 50 Shades of Grey. And he did that in a time when that was more possible than it is now. In my experience, the big publishers are still, for the most part, ignoring indie writers.
Unless they hit it big, you know, on their own.
I mean, there's some people. That's what I was going to say. There's people who are famous on their own for one reason or another, or have huge TikTok followings or huge Instagram followings, things like that. And sometimes you get a trad publisher who will come after them because, hell, you know, you're bringing in tens of thousands of people without having to do any marketing at all.
No risk.
But there are people like me and several people I know who have made significant money and sold millions of books on Amazon exclusive type of publishers like Athon and Variant, or self-published. And the trad houses, to them, we might as well not exist. And I mean, I'm making a really good living at this, but to them, I'm like, I don't say this, I'm not guessing. Let me put it that way. To them, it's like, oh yeah, you can submit something to our slush pile. It's like, no, I make a really good amount of money per year, you know, doing this on my own. And I get paid right after I publish something, like a couple of months, 3 months afterwards. So why would I give you a book to sit on for 2 years before you even look at it? No, I'm not going to.
Well,
what's the
they're
turnaround?
They're poor executives who live in New York City and have to take people out to dinner and stuff like that. I mean, like, somebody's got to pay for those Smith and Williams mistakes.
Those executives don't make those choices, though. Their editors do.
Yeah. What's the turnaround with Athon? When you send them a new book, how long does it take?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure what it is now, but it's definitely in the months, like a few months at most. It depends, just like in regular publishing. Do they know your name? Have you written anything else? You know, if you've
I mean, for you and your, like, when you personally,
I was there in the beginning. They only started in 2019. I was like one of the second or third author they published. So basically, anything I send them gets published.
Right, but okay, no, but my question is, you know, even with traditional publishers and big names, if they finish a book and send it to their publisher, it's going to be a year or more.
The turnaround for getting a process?
What's the turnaround for you?
Usually a couple months.
And that includes like the editing time and
editing, cover design. Sometimes it'll be longer. If they want to do a simultaneous release of an audiobook, then you may have to wait a few months to get the narrator to have time to record it and get it back. So there's times when it could take like 6 months, but that's only if they want to simultaneously release an audiobook.
Right. Well, that's great. So what are some of your thoughts, tips, you know, for other authors in being more productive and efficient? Because you definitely have this down. And as I said, you know, even though it sounds like taking the load off of all this other stuff would help some authors, at least. For you, it didn't make a huge difference that, you were just putting double the time in before, but now, you're still writing at the same level. So, what is something that other authors can sort of take to help their own sort of productivity and efficiency?
I got to say that the biggest thing, just the huge thing, and some people don't want to hear this, but the outlining, you've got to outline. If you don't know what you're going to write next, then it's going to take longer. I know there are discovery writers who can write fast. They've also been probably doing that for decades. It's just not possible when you're just starting out, especially, to write faster discovery writing than outlining. Some people think that it takes away the creativity, but I don't think so. I feel like when I'm outlining, that's the creative part, and it's a lot of fun. And I think more people should embrace the creative burst of, and unfiltered too. When I'm outlining, it's unfiltered. I don't have to choose just the right phrase or just the right arrangement. I just put the ideas on the page, and that's what you need to do. I tell people, don't hold back. Don't put a filter in. Put every idea you have into a big blob of words, and then start organizing the blob. And honestly, nowadays, that's one of the things, I am among the people who agree very much that AI cannot write readable words. But what AI can do is you take that big blob of words, you put it in the AI and say, arrange this into a 3-act structure. And then you can tell, when it does that, what you can tell from that is if the first act is like this big, and the third act is this big, and the second act is this big, you have to go back and redo it. And that saves you all the time of going through all the way through the outline, and you get to chapter 30 and you're like, oh crap, the book is over. It's not long enough. So that's one thing AI can really help, like ChatGPT. Put it in there, have it arrange it into a 3-act structure, and then you can tell, is this balanced? Do I need to redo this? That saves so much time nowadays. I used to have to go over and over and over, rebalancing the act structure. Some people use a 5-act structure. That's fine. I like 3-act structure because I feel that's the way we tell stories, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I watched a lot of movies.
Well, I'm a recovering pantster. So I started off as a pantster, and Craig and I used to have a lot of talks about that. But I've definitely become a plotter now, specifically because of that, because you write better stories if you follow a structure. I like Dan Harmon's story circle, because that you need to have those elements to make a satisfying story. Otherwise,
I would say you write better stories faster, because I have written some really good stories, discovery writing, but it took me a year and a half. And if you want to do this for fun, if this was a hobby, I would take a year and a half for every book, because it's fun. It's fun to just. I wrote the first 3 books that I published. Well, the first series I finished, let me put it that way. It was called Duty, Honor, Planet, and they were long books with lots of points of view. And I discovery wrote them, and it was so much fun. It was more fun finishing that. It was emotionally moving finishing that series. It touched me. Every time I read the last book, I want to choke up. It's like watching Return of the King for the first time, because this all came out of me, but it came out like in a way that was a revelation. But it took me 3.5 years to write those 3 books. So you can't do that if you want a career in publishing. So outlining is key. And when I say outlining, I don't mean bullet points, because a lot of people want to do like an outline like they had in school with A1, little A1. No, you need to give lots of detail. You put everything you have in that synopsis. You break it into a 3-act structure. You break those 3-act structures into chapters. Sometimes the chapter is 2 or 3 paragraphs from that 3x structure. Sometimes it's a part of a sentence. And then you go back in and you expand all those chapters. You put in place names, people names. You research all this now, so when you're writing the book, you don't have to think, what do I name this city? And then you spend 2 hours going down rabbit holes on the internet figuring out what you're going to name this city. You do that while you're outlining. What are you going to name a planet for me? What are you going to name a city? What are you going to name a person? What's their background? What's the weather like in this city when they're there? What does it smell like? There's a fight going on. Where is it happening? What are the surroundings like? If you have technical details that are important to the plot, like how a star drive works and how long it takes to get somewhere, you figure it all out then. And you put it all in the outline so that when you're writing, you don't have to sit there and think, how long does it take him to get there? Or what's the name of this star system? No, it's all right there. And you have it right in front of you.
Yeah, that's good advice, because you sometimes you get in that flow and you're writing along, and then you, like you said, you stop at this thing that you should have probably figured out before, and then that breaks your whole flow, and then you go down the rabbit hole, as you said, and you spend all this time, you come back, and now, even though you have the answer to that one part, your flow might be completely off now, and you can't get back into it.
Exactly. The second key thing, I think, is people always ask, how do you write that many words? I got this going on, I got that going on. And I'm like, do you go to the gym every day? I'm like, yeah, I go to the gym every day, or I go running every day, or whatever. It's like, how do you make time for that with all the other stuff you got to do? Well, it's just part of my schedule. It's part of your schedule. Mm-hmm. Make it part of your schedule. Make it something that's non-negotiable, like going to the gym or brushing your teeth or spending time with your kids. There's a non-negotiable period of however long you can get away with where you're right and you don't do anything else. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you ever feel sort of burnt out going at that pace almost every day, 3,000 words? Do you ever sort of feel like,
I don't usually, for a couple of reasons. One, this is what I wanted to do my whole life. And the ability to do it for a living, which is something so few people get to do, particularly in my genre. I mean, you can get a lot of romance and mystery writers and who can make a living at this, but science fiction, it's really hard to make a living. So there's so few people who can actually make a living at it that it would be, I feel like it'd be ungrateful for me to get burned out on it, because it's my dream. It's like getting burned out on being an astronaut. It's a dream job for a lot of people. So no, I don't get burned out that way. And also, I tend not to write, like if I'm writing a series, which I usually am because that's where you make monies in series. I don't write like book 1 and then turn around and write book 2 and usually I'll write book 1 in one series, then book 1 in another series, then book 2 in the first series, then book 2 in the second. I'll take turns. So I'm changing. Usually I'm alternating between military science fiction and space opera, between first person and third person, between lighthearted adventure and kind of grim, realistic military type of situations. So it keeps me, from getting in a rut.
I think that's very good advice.
You know what I want to do? I want to do this. I can't get away with it because of the publishing schedule that I am currently in. But as I'm talking about 3,000 words a day, and people say, you can get 3,000 a day. For me, the first 2,000 are really easy. The last 1,000 is hard. If I could get away with it, I would write 1,000 words in 3 different series per day. I'd write 3,000 words a day, but 1,000 words each in 3 different series per day. And then at the end of 3 months, I would have 3 books. But the problem is the publishing schedule I am in with particularly Variant, they want a book every 2 months. I can't get away with that. But if I ever got to the point where I could get away with it, I would do that because I feel like that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, you could do 2 books, 1,500 and 1,500. But, to me, that sounds, I have terrible memory, and like for me, if I was going to write a series, I would need to do it back to back, or I'd always be having to go back and reread the other ones and familiarize myself. And if I was switching like that, even worse, going back and forth, I would probably confuse myself with the details of one story mixed with the details of another.
You can get, like I was saying with NotebookLM, you can ask it, summarize this book for me.
Yeah.
And it'll give you or you can listen to the book like when you're in your car, when you're about to start writing the next book. And I do that sometimes. I'll be at the gym and I'll put the audio book for the first book in the series that I'm going to be writing the next book in while I'm working out at the gym. And it just reminds me of the voice and the characters, and the tone.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we are approaching the top of the hour, so we're going to have to wrap things up. But Rick, what a fascinating conversation this has been. I'm in a second going to ask you to share with everyone who's watching and listening where they can find out more about you and more about your books. But do you have any final questions, Craig?
No, listen, this has been really, really interesting. And I think there's a lot of great tips for authors. And even for me, the way that you're describing your plotting process, and I'm definitely a plotter. And I wasn't doing bullet points, but I was sort of giving more than bullet points, but not quite to the level that you're talking about. But it makes a lot of sense to me the way, I wasn't filling in those key things. And that is the kind of thing that I would get stopped on. And having those would probably have made my own process a lot easier. So, there's definitely stuff in here that is really worth listening. And I think people will get a lot out of it. So thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Rick, where can people find out more about you, find out more about your books and everything like that?
The easiest way to find all my books is to go on Amazon and put Rick Partlow in, because there's only 2 Rick Partlows who have ever been published that I can tell. And one of them is a Foley artist and B actor who wrote a biography. So all those science fiction books you find under Rick Partlow are me. And if you want to contact me or look at my thoughts on anything, the easiest way and the most reliable way is go on Facebook and look for the science fiction worlds of Rick Partlow. The web address would be facebook.com/Duty Honor Planet. But you can just look for the science fiction worlds of Rick Partlow on Facebook, and I will answer questions there. If you message me, I will answer you. If you post on my wall there, I will talk to you. I can't promise. I do have rickpartlow.com. It's kind of like a blog, but I rarely ever do anything with it. So that's the best way to contact me, is on Facebook.
Fantastic. Well, we will pop a link down below. So if you are watching this or on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast, make sure you scroll down to the description and click on that link and go and check out Rick's books. And in the meantime, as you scroll down there, you will find that big empty comment section. So make sure you leave Rick a nice comment and let him know how much you've enjoyed everything he's had to share with us today. And while you're down there, there's also that like button. There's that subscribe button if you haven't already, and that bell icon that you can click on. Smash that button. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a little bell icon that you can click to get notified every time there's a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be a new episode of Fully Booked coming out same time next week. So until then, cheerio.